Okay. Yeah, dude, it was this episode. I mean, it was a heck of a week too, because we had not only this episode, but we also had Tales of the Jedi drop, which was like I loved that the first episode of Tales of the Jedi was, 25-30 minutes. I'm like, oh, these are actually going to be a little bit longer, sort of like the episodes of Visions. But then they ended up all being 12 to 15 minutes or 12 to 16 minutes, and I'm like, I really, I know we'll get into it more, but I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
You can have something like that tells great stories without needing them to be long.
Yeah, I this brings me back to when the first Clone Wars series came out and how like kind of they did those little like vignettes.
Oh yeah.
I actually kind of like the vignette style. I feel like it serves this medium. It serves the Star Wars genre very, very well. Because sometimes you don't have enough story to fill like a 2-hour show, movie or a 10-hour television show.
Right.
And it's mainly, it's like a 15-20 minute type of thing. And I love that. I love how they're able to do this and take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. I loved the Count Dooku Qui-Gon story. I felt like that was so great. But yeah, at the same time though, I mean, I feel like they're firing on all cylinders. Andor is possibly one of my favorite television shows. It's so good. I'll be talking to someone about like, oh, they'll be talking about the Rings of Power or some other show that they're watching, and I'm like, are you watching Andor? Because you need to be watching Andor. This is that, and it's an important piece of television.
Completely agree with you. We were in Long Beach this past weekend. We took my son on his first flight, which was kind of cool.
Oh, that's cool.
We were able to get a flight from Oakland to Long Beach Airport directly, which was fantastic because Long Beach Airport, there's 2 terminals, but really it's not real terminals. Like it's less than a quarter the size of the Oakland Airport, smaller than the Burbank Airport, and it's like literally a 10-minute drive from my parents' house. So it was just fantastic. Anyway, while we were down there, I was talking to my dad, and the last time we were down, he was like, oh, I was watching The Mandalorian, and he goes, this is really good. I didn't know what this would be, but this is really great. I'm like, so this time I said, have you been watching the new show? He's like, wait, there's a new show? He doesn't go into it that often unless someone tells him to. I'm like, you need to be watching Andor. He's like, is it better than? I'm like, no, I'm not going to say it's better than The Mandalorian. I'm like, it's just different. It's different in a more intense way. I'm like, you need to watch it. I think you'll enjoy it.
Like if you like the spaghetti westerns, you're gonna love The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Like if you're like a western fan, oh my gosh, is The Mandalorian the fistful of dollars? Like, welcome to The Mandalorian. If you enjoyed the television show The Wire, you will love Andor.
Mm-hmm.
If you, I mean, I don't even know what to say about this show. I mean, it is very political. I mean, this last episode, which is named after I'm gonna just call this out. I'm not gonna get into too many spoilers in the pre-show here, but it's named after where Andor is a theme. Where Andor is in this latest episode is a theme for this entire of all of the characters in this episode. And I was just making this joke to my wife, Jeff, as I was coming in here, which is someone read the book Pimp by Iceberg Slim, and then said, you know what, I'm gonna turn this into a Star Wars television show. I'm gonna call it Andor. That book is about systems that use people and oppress people and hold them down and then oddly get them to thank you for it. It is, I mean, this show, it's one of my favorite TV shows now.
Yeah, it is amazing. It really is. Should we just dive right in? Because I know we've got a lot there.
Let's do it. Let's jump in. We have 2 episodes that we're covering. We're covering episodes 7 and 8 because we weren't here last week. So let's jump in.
Let's do it. There we go. And I'm just gonna jump right into the to say this right now. See if this works.
Yes,
it did.
Yes,
Siren didn't come up, so I'm gonna do this now because if anybody saw the title, by the way, saw the title. I put that down there because of a note you said to me
Yes.
earlier this week. Oh, my camera! Like I need to raise my chair. Realize I am like super low in this. Oh, that is my back. That is not my chair. Is it this? I don't know. Okay, that's a little better. I looked like I was like super low in the frame for some reason. Anyway, turn that siren off. That's too much. I wanted to just start off with a spoiler alert because anything that we say, including kind of this loose title, is an ode to the most current episode from this week of Andor.
Yes.
So if anybody didn't get that, we're going to be talking a lot about both episodes 7 and 8. 8 is fresh in our minds. And on top of all that, if we can sneak some of it in, we'll talk a little bit about Tales of the Jedi, although we got a lot to talk about. So we're going to see how that plays out. Before, though, because we're both like in bated breath, like dive into this.
I was about to say, I feel like we need a second show. We need this show tonight. We need another show, and then we'll be caught up because there's that much that's going on right now. Like,
Yes.
I would like the show is typically an hour for anyone. By the way, thank you everybody who's joining us. We're eager to hear your comments. Please, of course, subscribe to the channel. It always helps. But we're like super excited to talk about all this stuff. The show's only an hour tonight, and like I said, Jeff, I feel like we could do 2 or 3 shows on just what's going on.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's just so much content, and it's not just 2 episodes of TV plus the Tales of the Jedi. It's just there's so much involved in each of these that you can't just frivolously talk about them in 15-20 minutes and you're done. There's just too much. So before we get into all of that, we did announce a couple of weeks ago our giveaway for where is it? There it is. For a copy of In the High Republic, Path of Deceit. Right here. Brand new copy of the book. It's very pretty and shiny. We have that, and we did a little circle. We got some the subscribers that came through. Thank you all, everyone who's either watching live or catches on replay, who subscribed to the channel after watching that. And I wanted to announce, I didn't actually write it on the screen here, but we picked Daz the Comic Key Chaser. That's the person's user account. Woo! So if you're watching, Daz, congratulations, my friend. Win a copy. I will see if I can reach out to you on YouTube, or I'll post a note in the comments and try to tag you in it. But reach out to me directly, either through YouTube or TikTok or one of the other socials, and we'll get your address and get this book shipped off to you. But congratulations, and thank you for subscribing. We appreciate having everybody here. We appreciate you being as excited about these things as we are. So yeah, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
With that, we can get into the awesomeness that is the last 2 episodes of Andor.
Yes. So last time we did this, we kind of did a recap. And I feel like that helped to steer our review. And if you want, Jeff, I'm eager because I can go into this. I'm eager to throw it over to you. You did a great job kind of keeping us on path when we did episode 6. Do you want to just handle episode 7? And
I don't know.
like
See, so my
off?
brain is like totally consumed by 8 this week. So I think you might need to be the person to like bring us back around. So all can everybody here watching, and Aussie Star Wars nerd, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Keep us on track too if we miss something, or throw your comments out. We totally want to hear them.
Okay, so we're gonna go back 2 weeks.
The Wayback Machine. Into the Wayback Machine.
Exactly. Going to the Wayback Machine. We're gonna do episodes 7 and 8 tonight. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. We're gonna try to keep episode 7 to a tight 25 minutes. So episode 7 of Andor was called The Announcement. Or Announcement. And I remember seeing the title of that and thinking that was strange. And that is actually a reference to a line that's coming out later, which is that that what the rebels did. This is everything that's happened after the heist, and of course, the entire series has shifted yet again. Episode 7 is now a brand new story. We had a story about us, someone trying to escape from where they are. It was a bit of a social commentary, criminal thriller.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got into a political thriller, and now we are in. And then we had a heist. We had 2 episodes of a heist show, and now episode 7 is the fallout from the heist. and Andor being on the run. And the idea of this being called the announcement is this is an announcement by what they're starting to see as the rebellion. That the ISB is saying that Deirdre is saying this is an announcement. This crime. It is not just a random act. It's not just a robbery. It's not just a one-off. This is an announcement that they are here. And so the episode opens with a brand new musical track. And you, by the way, Jeff, thank you for pointing this out. You're the one that kind of got me wise to this, that every episode of Andor has a slightly different musical track. And it's very reflective of where the episode is going. This episode has a lot more of opens with a lot more of that like synth music. It's not as orchestral. It's very much it's like high tension synth. It's like very much of like 80s, 90s, late 70s type of sci-fi synth, Logan's Run type of music.
Yes.
You really get that. By the way, Logan's Run is all over the place in these two episodes.
It really is.
And this is what I mean. Like I feel like someone, Jeff, wrote this show and said, I know this guy Ryan, I think he's gonna like it. So it opens with Cyril at his house, and Cyril, of course, has lost his job. He's living with his mom. His uncle's trying to get him a job. And Cyril, I noticed, has stormtrooper toys. He's staying in his childhood room with his stormtrooper toys, and he's seeing the news. All of the news is starting to break about the heist that's happened, about the money that's been stolen, about the fact that the rebels have that this is a terrorist attack, and people are now starting to use the word rebellion. And it cuts right to the ISB after that.
Okay, so before we go to the ISB, I wanted to pause on that for a minute, because something I found really interesting about I think my voice might be a little too hot, so let me pull that microphone away. Something I found very interesting is Cyril's mom refers to their uncle by a name, and I forget what the name is. It's like, I forget what the name. Do you remember?
Uncle Harlow.
Uncle Harlow. The way she refers to it, though, that I find very interesting is sort of like how a parent refers to a very young child, refers to an uncle or an aunt to a young child as a way to remind that young child that to connect the dots of like, that person is this title, like to connect them. So when I say Uncle Harlow, I mean this person. But I find that interesting because Cyril's not a kid, and clearly Cyril is not like, is a grown person who thinks normally and all those sorts of things. Yes, it's hyper focused on this one incident, but I find it very interesting that they've chosen the mom to make this reference to Uncle Harlow in the way that she does. I feel like there is something more there, that this who this person is not simply his uncle. I don't think it's as simple as his uncle, because then she also says, when she talks, she mentions multiple times about going to him for a favor for Cyril. One of those times she says, now that I've called in the family favor. Yes. And she says it, she gives the preface of the family favor. And it makes me wonder, is it a single favor for the family, or is this a thing that she is able to do, like break glass in case of emergency? And it really makes me wonder, what is that? And where is that going to come into play in the larger story? Because clearly whoever this is was able to just pull any string they wanted to get Cyril someplace, but picked someplace that was not, Cyril was going to find beneath him. Like they could, if they could have easily got him this position, wasn't even really an interview. It was just got him this position. Even when Cyril told all of his stuff that he'd been through, the person was like, yeah, I'm still going to hire you anyway. It tells me that person could have got Cyril almost any job. So why this one? Why did it play out this way? I'm very curious about that.
I think I think you've hit it on the head. I think that it speaks to the fact that they have like this Uncle Harlow is like their patron, and it's a patronage relationship. That's why she, as an adult, has to refer to another adult as Uncle Harlow. This is a person that's more superior, even in their family life, is more superior to her, and of course to Cyril. What's more, and this is what I love about this, is in that breakfast scene, which again, I love the look of everything. I cannot say enough. I've got this written all over my notes. Again, I'm coming with notes. I love the 1970s future. I love all of this like crazy look of everything. She points out that he has altered his suit to have a higher neck. And she says, individuality, you think that's what they want at the Bureau of Standards? And all of this speaks to, and this is where we're constantly building the story of this wildly fascist, oppressive regime that people live in, which is the Empire, and how it's so important to conform. It's so important to conform. It's so that you should have a look, that you should be a certain way, that you should be uniform as everybody else, and that if you're not, it's important not to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how his mother points that out to Cyril, and that Cyril wants to be more, and that he, of course, cannot. Even though he's more on the villain side of the spectrum here. Cyril can't be anything more than what he is. And that's because that's what the Empire society has created. What's more is that like in these types of societies, the well-connected can pull, they don't have as many rules as the regular people do. And so because of that, Uncle Harlow's exist all over. And that happens in every type of totalitarian regime that's run by people, is that the rules are for everybody else but me. And that's exactly what's happening here. That's why, strings can be pulled, and Cyril, who is a, failure, can just have his record overlooked, and suddenly he can have a job again. Mm-hmm. Whereas you might take one wrong step on a beach, which we'll get to later in this episode, and end up in prison. So yeah, this is those two scenes, what happens at the start of this episode and what I just referenced at the end, are great bookends for what happens with this like wildly oppressive society. So I'll go on. We cut from Cyril to the ISB, mm-hmm. and it's great because it opens with, we just need to know how tight to close our fist, which is a great reference to Princess Leia saying, the tighter you close your fist, the more star systems will slip from your grasp. And I love how they talk about how important the ISB, the Security Bureau, that they talk about how all this work that we've done in peacetime is making us ready now. And I thought about how when you live in a society like this, it's never peace. That's very like 1984. It's very, the war isn't mm-hmm. with East Asia or Eurasia. It's just that the war continues, as to rob the line from literature. Very
similar to not necessarily the movie, but the book 1984, because in that yes. book, what they reference is that history is constantly being rewritten, and the main character of the book is somebody who works in a place where he rewrites history. He rewrites yes. parts of the history based off of whatever the authority deems the thing they want history to be at this point. Like, they've over-exaggerated it in that book, but they talk about how the war was this way for a while, and now the war is something else. But nobody's seen it. Nobody knows. Yep. No one's around it. They just know that warplanes fly over periodically, and then all of a sudden, hey, the war's changed. We're delete all the other stuff that we talked about, a year ago, and replace it with all this stuff, and that's what he does. And like that, you're exactly right. That what is the message today? Like, what's the soup du jour? Because that's the message we're going to feed people, and that's all they need to know.
Yeah, and that there is no difference in a society like that between wartime and peacetime. It's always wartime. You're always running. And so they even talked about how they're going to levy more taxes. And then there's the mustache dude from the Death Star in episode
It's Wolf Yularen.
Yes,
It's Colonel. So at this point, is for everyone who's watching right now, and if you didn't recognize him, because why would you? Obviously a different actor than the voice actor who plays him in the Clone Wars and other places as well. That is Colonel Wolf Yularen, who was, I think, Admiral Wolf Yularen, who was partnered with the Jedi all throughout the Clone Wars. If you've read any of the Thrawn books, the Timothy Zahn trilogy, not the most recent one, the Ascendancy series where it takes place in the Chaos, but the series where Thrawn first becomes part of the Empire. Wolf Yularen is the characters in those books, and in the audiobooks you hear him talk and et cetera, et cetera. And he seems like a pretty decent human being, except he works for the Empire. But in this, he is not. Like he is very much the colonel of the Internal Security Bureau. These are, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. These are the secret police. These are the Gestapo. They have a much prettier looking uniform, and they have a clean looking building, but they're the Gestapo. They are the epitome of secret police for this fascist regime, and we're getting a peek behind the curtain of what that looks like. But I find it so interesting because not only is it Wolf who leads it, but all the people who are in there just behave like this is just the job they do, and this is the good work that's got to get done. But Wolf, this guy knows. He knows exactly what he is doing and the master that he serves in doing so, because he was part of the Clone Wars. He served alongside Anakin and Obi-Wan and all of these other Jedi. He knows that they didn't. Sorry, this is a tangent we could go on in a whole other episode.
No, but this is what I mean. Like in societies like this, the truth is relative. It's relative to who's in charge.
Yes.
And so there is no truth. And this is where and I'm sorry, because to me, Andor has turned a corner into becoming a very political show.
Yes,
more political than it was before. Mm-hmm. And again, I've said this before. This is like Star Wars: The Wire. There is a lot in here that's dealing with social injustice matters. There's a lot in here about oppression, but there's so much in here about how bureaucracy is created. These systems are created to service themselves. That the bureaucracy is a great form of control, and that just keeping people busy, like having like an endless amount of rules just to have them, because it keeps people in line. Some of these rules are like social rules or professional rules. And when we get to the prison, we also see that some of these are life and death type of rules.
Yes.
But it's all about control. It's not about order. It's not about justice. It's all about control.
I'm looking at a quote right now. You bringing this up reminded me of this quote. I wanted to get it right, so I went and looked it up real quick. From Rogue One, when Orson Krennic goes and finds Galen Erso and wants to bring him and his family back so we can work on the Death Star. And Orson says, "We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close to providing peace and security for the galaxy." And Galen says, "You're confusing peace with terror." And Orson, as you would expect somebody in a fascist regime who's bought into the whole thing, says, "Well, you have to start somewhere." And that's exactly what you're describing, is the people who want this because the bureaucracy is their life. The rules is the world. Like the outcome isn't even a thought for them anymore. The outcome is making sure that everyone obeys the rules. To what end? What do you mean, to what end? The end is obeying all the rules. But there's no, to your point, like there's no end result of that. Like you think that's peace or that's justice or order. It's not. It's just unquestioned bureaucracy for the sake of it, which scares the crap out of people. So they do those things. The only people who benefit are the people at the very, very, very top.
Exactly. It's the people the ones that are in power have the best of this situation, obviously. And then everybody else is just trying to stay alive. And that's no way to live. And so you see this. So all of this episode is largely the reaction that comes from the heist. And so then we're back on Coruscant in another part because Mon Mothma's space Buick has to land and she's got to go talk to Luthen.
Yes.
And so Luthen tells her this line, because of course Mon Mothma is really upset. Like, I can't believe that you did this. Like I can't believe that we're doing this. And this is where the thought of being a rebel hits the reality of being a rebel. And you can see that this is one of these moments where Luthien's trying to tell Mon Mothma, what did you think we were going to do? It's like, this is what a rebellion is. You're going to get your hands dirty. Your hands are going to go into the muck. And I think that up until then, for Mon Mothma, this was a thing she was separated from. This was a thing that she like. This was a theory, not practice. And so suddenly Mon Mothma is having to realize that she can't just get by on theory. And Luthien tells her turning back will be impossible. And was there ever a weapon that someone built that wasn't used?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, this is like legit. This is a great set of lines. And if you notice, the gift that she's returning is the gift that she was going to give her husband. Mm-hmm. That's why she's there. It's all the pretend of what she's doing. She's returning a mask, and he's trying to sell her the club.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what is happening. Like, again, this show is working on so many levels: the acting, the scenes, all of this. But the ability for them to talk about this while she's trying to return a mask and he's trying to give her the club.
Yeah, I totally get it. And Joanna, thank you. It's so cool to have you here. I completely agree with you. Like,
yes,
the reaction that we see Wolf Yularen and the chiefs of the ISB, like when we enter that meeting room, and it's almost like we're brought into that while this thing is happening. It's not a meeting. This is just Wolf is telling everybody, here is literally what is just enacted: legislation, new rules.
Yep.
Law and order, big air quotes there, because it's not that. Basically, new terror standards to scare everybody. Like, you steal from us, we are going to destroy everything that you love. Like, this is it's not even a David and Goliath thing. This is the small child overreacting to the smallest thing in the world that doesn't really affect them a whole heck of a lot, because they need everyone. I need everybody to know that we're the big kid in the room. And I'm going to do that by yelling it as loud as I possibly can and overreacting in every way that I possibly can. And it's fascinating to watch it happen, because instantly, like, this legislation and this rule and all of this lockdown and all sentences across the border getting increased immediately, and just all of these things happen just right off the bat.
And I will say, I totally agree with Joanna's comment here about this being a critique of capitalism. I mean, I'm not going to lie. That's why I brought up Iceberg Slim, because as it said, that book that Iceberg Slim wrote is possibly one of the greatest retellings of capitalism of all time. And it's because it's about how systems like this work the best. And by the way, like, if I'll see it in the comments. I'm sure it's going to be, go for it, comrade. Capitalism works its best when there is there are a group of people that are without, and that people within that system act as guards to one another. And you actually see this take place, and that's what I mean by Andor has made a hard turn, and it is really trying to tell a story now, and it's not pulling any punches. It's trying to show how a lot of these systems that we even live with today are built to keep people in control, and for even regular people to be guards of their neighbors or guards of each other, for the protection of the people at the top. And again, I'm not, there's no flag behind me that says Viva la Revolution, but I'm just saying, I've read enough of this literature to know, wow, someone's being really bold with this show, and I love it.
I do too. I absolutely adore. I adore that in the last episode, and then also in episode 8, to your point, there was a hard right turn made, or there was a hard turn made into, and now it's time to embrace what the story actually is. That had to happen at some point. I'm sure there's always a case to be made, and people have constructed criticisms that it could have been done earlier or later or what have you, and that's fair. That's totally fair. That said, it needed to happen because rebellions don't just simply be like real rebellion, real revolution does not simply begin because the people are like just a little upset about, I don't like what you're doing. That's not how that's not where this starts. We see like the French Revolution, and Joanna probably could talk to this better, and you probably can talk to this better than I can. But what little I know about it, the French Revolution comes, and it's a revolution. Like it is a tidal wave that sweeps through seemingly overnight from a historical perspective and makes changes and has an effect on the populace. That's a little bit different than the rebellion we're talking about here. Rebellion we're talking about here is they're trying to figure out how to do it, how to be there. But at some point, somebody, some one person or small group has to finally say, that's it. We are making this official. We are doing this now. I liked, and I don't want to skip too far ahead, but in episode 8, when, again, here, I'll just throw this up there real quick.
Yeah,
lots
spoilers.
of these tonight. Lots of these tonight. Just go away. Come on. Oh, it's not going off. Sorry. Why is it not turning off? Uh-oh. We're just gonna have to live with spoilers on our screen the whole time.
It's spoilers.
So in this,
keep going.
In this most current episode, there's one particular scene where we do get to see Saw Gerrera, a younger Saw Gerrera. And Luthen and him are having a conversation. And I love the banter back and forth. But the reason I bring that up specifically is Luthen makes a very good point. I'm going to mess up the wording he uses, but I'll try to paraphrase as best I can. Luthen makes a really wonderful point with Saw. That, yes, Saw sees himself as getting things done. And he's not wrong. He sets out to a task. His partisans go out and do their thing, and they complete something. But what they're doing, and what I think is pronounced in Andor, if nobody noticed it before, it is highly pronounced in the show, is we don't see the Empire reacting to the partisans, Saw Gerrera's group, in the way that they just reacted to what happened on Aldhani. They freaked the F out. They freaked out and enacted all kinds of stuff, and they went full bore down we are locking everybody down. We're doing all these negative things to scare everybody. They haven't been doing that with Saw's group. And I think that right there should tell everybody the difference between a fringe terror group that's out there trying to do things and blowing up buildings and doing things here and there to something that is seemingly real to the people that are in power and in control. They don't see what Saw does or what his group is doing as a real threat to them. It annoys them. It's like an itch you can't ever scratch, but they've never seen it as a true threat. What just happened on Aldhani and what Luthen is trying to tell Saw and trying to get him to understand is that if we do this all together, they've seen this as a threat. If we do this together, we can be a real threat to them and a real set of change, and people will see it this way. But if we continue to operate alone and separate, that's not going to happen, or it's going to be much harder to get where we want. And Saw, unfortunately, doesn't want to go along with that for a variety of his own reasons. But one of them is he's like, give me the means to blow Ish up, and I'm going to keep going and doing that. And Luthen's trying to explain to him, like, that's not, like, you're trying to make every situation into hammer, meet, nail. And it doesn't always accomplish what you're looking for. And as we get further into episode 7 and then move into episode 8, I don't mean our show tonight, but I mean in general, we notice more and more the effect it is having on Mon Mothma and her relationships, how Luthen is behaving as a result of it, and what they're having to do. Because even though they were prepared, or at least Luthen was, they're also not very prepared for what really is the outcome and how they're going to have to play this game. And I find that really, I love that they are doing this, because no rebellion is ever this one group is deciding to be the rebels and they're the only one doing that. Likely there are multiple, and we saw this in World War II with the Nazis. There were multiple, the French resistance and the British resistance. There's all these other groups,
Yeah.
resistance parties within Germany who are trying to do things. There's all these different small resistance pockets separate from the military that sometimes are able to come together and do something unified, but in a lot of cases they can't because of a variety of reasons. And I think we needed to start to see this sort of thing occur in Andor to really solidify for everyone watching that this is how rebellions actually start, and it's not pretty, and it's not simple, and it's not unemotional. It takes a toll. We see that with Kel or Vel and her partner. It's taking a toll on individual human relationships, even though they're both in it. They're also on different wavelengths. We saw this in episode 8. They're on different wavelengths for how they're going to accomplish and what they're each going to do for each other and for the movement overall. I know it just kind of went on a whole rant there, but I really appreciate how the storytellers, how the writers are approaching reinforcing what it looks like to engage in rebellion in this show.
Yeah, I just think that it's great that because the show is taking a stand about things that are right and wrong, and I actually really like that. I like when I feel like I used to have an editor that told me a long time ago that the only thing that was in the middle of the road was yellow lines and armadillos, and that you don't want to be in the middle of the road. It's important to take a stand. It's important to take a stand. And so many shows today are so afraid to do things like that. And I think that's what I like about Andor, because even its show mimics its characters. Like Mon Mothma is having to realize that she's going to have to take a stand because she can't. There's no clean way to be a part of this rebellion. She's going to have to risk, and I really liked how she even said, she's learned a lot from Palpatine. And kind of about hiding in plain sight. She's even learned a lot about the subtle art of acting, all of the politics that goes into organization, and even when she's dealing with Luthien, like how she's kind of working those things out. But I think that that episode 7 does a really great job in kind of showing the after effect. The natural overreaction of a fascist state to a mosquito bite, and that, but it had to do with money. And now this faction has guns and it has means. It has an ability to strike, and now it has money to be able to fund additional terror. And so that is something that they're trying to. That's a thing that they're trying to deal with. And so we leave all of that fallout of the actions of 7 people in one heist. And we go back to Cassian, and Cassian's gone home. And right when he gets there, I'm thinking, you can't go home, man. There's no home for you anymore. You're on the run. You got to get moving. And he goes home. And of course, he runs into his foster mother, essentially, who is basically telling him, "You got to get out of here. They're looking for you, and it's time to run." And he is like, "No, you're going to come with me. I'm going to pick up your life, and we'll run together." And she's like, "We can't run. There's no place to go. The Empire is destroying everything." And he's like, "Then we'll go someplace where they're not," which is, by the way, the common answer to "I want to be a bystander" to oppression. Is it's not really affecting me, and guess what? I now have the money to not be oppressed, so I'm going to go and live life, and you can come with me. And she says to him, and he goes and visits Bix and tries to make things right with Bix, and of course he can't. And so now he's realizing that he can't go home. He can't be at home. That he's got to go on the run. And he tries to go back again. His foster mother, who's played by Fiona, she's the aunt on Harry Potter.
Right.
And oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite acting scenes. This is unreal. I if you haven't watched episode 7, get off the stream and go watch this because he says to her,
well, if you do, subscribe first before you leave.
Subscribe
and then go watch it.
He says to her, you have to come with me. You have to come with me. She says, I'm not. I believe in the rebellion and I'm going to stay here. No one's going to take me. No one's going to be able to invade the most private place that I have, which is my mind. And this, by the way, is like an idea from like Fahrenheit 451. This is another idea from 1984. This is an idea from V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta also has this issue with the fascist state. And by the way, an amazing graphic novel. Mm-hmm. And they talk about the last inch that you have when you're living in a fascist state. And it's the inch that's up here. And she's trying to tell Cassian, I'm not giving up that inch. And you're going to have to leave. And he says, but I'll never be at peace. I'll always be worrying about you. And she says to him, that's just love. You'll have to deal with that. And I that scene is so well done. I'll be worried about you all the time. That's just love. That's a part of the last inch. Even in V for Vendetta, they talk about that the last inch is things like love. It's things like kindness. That's the last inch that we all have as humans when we're in systems that try to oppress us. It's what makes us humans is caring about each other. By the way, this is not a speech that I wrote. I'm really just coming up with this right now. And I felt like that scene is the thesis of what they're trying to get out of the rebellion. Because at the end of episode 8, you're right. Luthien saying, I'm just so afraid. What am I? I'm a coward. I'm afraid of an empire that grows so big we'll never be able to overthrow it. Because we'll all lose that last inch that makes us people, which is that ability to love and be kind and be with one another as just people. This is a great show. And so then Cassian leaves and goes to Space Miami. Yes. I heard someone else describe it as that was the first thing I thought, because I'd been to Miami Beach and I thought, this is Space Miami. He goes to Space Miami. And I know that we're not episode 8, so I'm going to jump and I'm just going to say what happens in Space Miami. Cassian is living an easy life with money, and they're talking about, hey, you got to go. He's with a young woman. They're just in a hotel. It looks like she's telling him we got to go get pizzos, which is great. I don't even know what a pizzo is, and he's like on Jackass Island, like Pleasure Island from Pinocchio. Like it's just you're there. It's Canto Bight from The Last Jedi. Yeah. It's people that have enough money to not have to worry about the Empire. And then he is just up and arrested for a crime that he's not even a part of, but he just looks the wrong way. And this is the ultimate expression of a fascist regime is just being disappeared. And he keeps saying, I'm just a tourist. I'm just a tourist, which, yeah, he's a tourist in his own life. He stands for nothing. This is the line that Luthien tells him in the second episode. Wouldn't you like to just give your all to something? No, Cassian just wants to live at Easy Street and live a life of no consequence. He wants to live on Jackass Island, and he thinks that he can buy his way away from oppression, which he can't. And of course, it catches up with you. That eventually tyranny catches up with everybody. And we realize as Cassian is being let off after a drumhead trial where he's now going to lose 6 years of his life, that all of these people, Cyril, the people that he's leaving back home, and even Cassian, and even Mon Mothma, are all in different types of prisons.
Yes.
And they're all trapped. And they're all slowly getting to that point where they're going to be left with just that last inch? And will they be willing to trade that for ease, for an easier life,
Mm-hmm.
for what next level thing will they give up for that last inch
It's
to just
interesting.
live?
It's interesting that you bring up Mon Mothma, Luthen, and Cassian in this case. One of the notes I wrote down about him being on Narkina 5 in that prison. I wrote a note that what was interesting to me is the superficial dichotomy between Mon Mothma and Perrin, or Mon Mothma and Tay on Coruscant. I'll put Luthen aside for now, but actually Luthen probably is even really good to have on here too. Is the dichotomy between those folks on Coruscant and Cassian in a work prison essentially on Narkina 5, because on the superficial side, when you watch those various scenes, you're like, he's in prison, like it's clearly horrible, he's in prison, they could be tortured or fried on the floor just by walking, like all these things. But when you think about it, when I thought about it for a couple of minutes, I realized it's not a superficial difference. There's actually very little that is different, if at all, between the two things. All three of them are trapped in prisons. Like, we watch it with Mon Mothma. We've only seen Mon Mothma, other than going into Luthen's shop and being one time in the pod in the Senate chamber, we've only seen her now in this what seemingly glamorous space of her apartment with all the Changerilla niceties. Luthen, same. We only either see him in his shop or flying from Coruscant to someplace else where he's taking off all of the makeup to finally be in front of somebody. But really, we see him in his shop, and he's just in the shop in makeup with his own mask on, trying to cover himself up. And then we see Cassian. At least with Cassian on Narkina 5, he knows where he is, and he knows what every day is going to look like. It's going to look the same as the day before, but he knows, and he knows that if he steps out of line, he knows exactly what's going to happen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no ambiguity in it. If he steps out or does something wrong, instantly he will be thrown right back into line. Whereas the other two, they don't, and that's what keeps them so scared and working so hard to try to balance things. Is they don't they believe they know, but they're not in physical prison. They're in a mental prison that that's been constructed for them and that they had to walk into on their own.
So Jeff, this gets me to a topic called panopticism. There's a concept I think it's the 19th century, the French prisons are designed as in this thing called the panopticon, which is all of the prisons, it's built into a big circle. All of the prisoners are in this big circle, each with their own cell. And then there's one tower that's in the middle. And you can't really tell if you're ever being watched. It just looks like you could be watched at any time. And people have extrapolated that concept, panopticism, as a means by which of a societal control. Is that because we don't know if we're ever being watched about any given thing, that we kind of self-police ourselves because we're also afraid of the consequence of what that could be. And this show is showing that in the extreme. Mon Mothma is literally walking through a little apartment. By the way, I think we've crossed over into episode 8 now, everybody. So now we're in episode 8. And Mon Mothma is walking around her little apartment, and it's all of the little things look like webs around her. I noticed. Yes. I loved that. And everything is closing in. But if you notice, there's all of these references. While we're seeing the very literal interpretation of prison, which is what is going on with Andor, we are seeing how others are in similar prisons as well. And how even tradition can be a prison. Mon Mothma talks about being married at 15. And I thought about how, wow, like this show is really going for it. Like this show is saying there are prisons, there are, and I don't mean to say it so blasé, like prisons, and I just use the word blasé, and that also sounds stupid, but I just mean like they keep referring to systems of control, whether it is a tradition that people follow because they were talking about getting married at 15 years old, money. They talk about how important it is to be able to access money and family money and all these things, the systems of control of capital and having money, and of course bodily control. When Cassian's in prison, he's being told, if you do these things, you get fed well. If you follow the rules, you get to stay alive, or at least live without pain. The more you follow the rules, we'll give you a little bit more food. Your food comes with flavor if you follow the rules more. And I hate to say this because I think that this is an indictment of, and I hate to say it because I know that this is political to say, but I think that prison was a straight up indictment of capitalism, which is, if you work hard and follow all the rules, guess what? You get food with flavor. And if you don't, and you fall behind because all we care is about you, the productive nature of you and how effective you are,
yep,
you don't get food. You don't get the good food. You go lower on the rung. And then if you go even further below that, you get physically punished.
You know what? Dude, you just reminded me of something. You and I have talked about this before, and I think I've brought this up before, that I probably should do a blog post about this, or a video at least, that to me, productivity is a fallacy, that it's a farce. It is the ultimate, I guess, for like a terrible, this is probably the wrong way. This is totally like inflammatory to say it, but
do it, comrade. Do it. I'm here. I'm already with you. It's the never-ending goalpost move. That's what productivity is.
Productivity is a prison, because with the word productivity, you're always striving for, how productive can I be? How many of these checklist items can I squeeze into a day and get them done? And if you didn't get them all done, oh God, I feel like crap. But if I only give myself 4, I could totally attain that by noon. Great. Oh, but I wasn't very productive because I didn't fill all of my time with something that I'm actively doing all of the time. But it does exactly what you're describing, that if you're not super productive, it's obviously especially in a capitalist society, if you're a white collar worker, you have a lot more freedom. If you're at kind of the top, so to speak,
you get food with flavor.
You get food with flavor, and you have a little bit more freedom to not have to be like, I don't have to be as productive. But if you're not in that, and you're somebody who does work where productivity is all that really matters, and you fall behind, you don't have a job anymore. Like, that's not right. Because someone necessarily is out to get you, but if you can't pull your weight and keep up with the joking version of this analogy is Lucille Ball and her neighbor on the chocolate factory line trying to shove things, and they can't keep up with the wrapping. Like, that's literally what productivity looks like. And you fall behind, and everything around you just starts to fall apart. And that's almost exactly what this is. Like that. I think that's you bring it up such a good point. Is it we get to see it in a very binary way in the prison. It's this or it's that. That's all there is. There is no other thing that's involved. Like, it's either this or it's going to be that, period. But with Mon Mothma and Luthen and the other people around them, it is still binary, but there are, as you said, there are webs and veils in front of those binary things that'll give you the impression that you have choice and that you have control. But if you don't self-police, as you said, or self-guide kind of protect yourself, you could run afoul of that very quickly. It's always there on the edges. It's always there in the margins. You don't quite see it, but it's right there. And so you have to do something to kind of maintain within the boundaries. So the binary choice is still there. It just looks prettier.
Yes, I was about to say, it's even like you can see it in the politics, in that, they're going to pass laws that mean nothing. There's this idea that there's choice, and choice is an illusion. I kept waiting for someone to come out and say, "You've been living in a dream world, Neo." I'm not joking around, and the productivity is a race between tables. By the way, I see the Joanna's comment here about the prison work where productivity is a race between tables, and whichever table loses is physically punished. All I thought of was how fascism, as an extension of capitalism, is at its strongest pressure when you have people be guards to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big part of that is the middle class acts as guards for the rich against the poor. People think that the table that's winning in these scenes feels more superior to the tables that don't. It creates classes. It allows for people to feel more distinguished, more privileged. It creates pecking orders when in fact they're all in a prison. It doesn't matter. And what's great about seeing that is the end sequence of Andor in prison is he's so focused on his task, he's mistaken the act for the thing itself,
mm-hmm.
which is he's in a prison. He's in a prison of the mind. He's in a prison of his physicality. He's now not thinking anymore. He's lost the bigger picture because he's got to make. I mean, the fact that they're making widgets that who knows what they're for. It doesn't matter. I love how there were people that had all these theories about what do you think they're making? What do you think they're making? It doesn't matter what they're making.
That's the point. Is not what they're making. It's the fact that they are making something that is seemingly meaningless.
Yeah.
Because what it makes me think of, there was two thoughts I had on like the geek theory I want to have about those things is they're actually constructing stuff for the Death Star. Like that's
a cool Star Wars.
That's
thing.
a cool.
I thought that too.
But I think what would be even more interesting, and I actually would hope this would be the case, is that in the one scene where one of the prisoners in 52D, his 5th floor, 2nd room day shift or something like that, is doing the sign language to somebody else in another tube. But they're going in, that other tube goes to a different tower where seemingly that is where they sleep and where they work, and there are different floors. And it makes me think that what if all they're doing is taking those widgets and then they move them over to another room, and the other room's job is to disassemble those widgets.
Oh my gosh!
These two groups have no idea that's happening. They're literally just, you build it, and then they take the Duplo blocks go here and they get constructed. Then we go over here and we unconstruct it. Then it goes back here. And I mean, I think one of the evidences of that may actually be real is in the scene where the old man is trying to get his one shaft to go, and he goes, it's not lining up properly. And I'm like, yes, it's trying to also imply that he's old and he can't keep up. And you can see the strain on his face all the time. But also I'm thinking that's something where it got dinged or damaged in the other room when it was taken apart improperly, and now putting it back together. But like that would be to me, that would be more of the nail in the coffin rather than you're building this for the Death Star. Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. Okay. That'd be great. But no.
Fine,
if you want to mentally break someone down, have them break out of this area of the prison to get to the wider space, to realize that the wider space is literally just a duplicate. And there's another group of people who they're competing against each other. It reminds me, I don't know if you've read the books, The Maze Runner, but it reminds me something like that, where you're in this one prison that's a maze and you finally get out of the maze just to realize that the next step is just another part of the game with another thing that is just a little bit more real than it was before, but it's planned and it's already waiting for you. Like it was already scripted and ready to go. And you're one of like 9 mazes and they're all doing something similar in a slightly different form. And it's like, that's the like you climb to the top of the maze just to realize the whole world is a maze.
No, I felt the same way. I was almost expecting all of those things to just be dumped in the water. They're just building all these things to just like get rid of them. But I also thought, I bet another group just takes them back apart again, and they just keep going through this cycle over and over and over again of building and taking it apart because it doesn't matter. This is all a part of control, that all of these systems are a part of control. And I thought about how they're really trying. That's what I mean by this show is taking a stand. It is not accidental that there is an elderly gentleman that is on Andor's build team because he can't move as fast. And I thought, wow, they're trying to show how, and this is a problem that we have in American culture, is that as people get older, how we fight, how we struggle with how useful they can still be in society, because, well, can they still work? And Americans, we as Americans are obsessed with work. It's how we introduce ourselves. And when we often, you know, you and I have talked about this. Like, I recently met a group of parents that my kids play sports with, and I worked really hard to not talk about what I did for a living, but talk about literally anything else.
Yes.
And this show, I think, is trying to say, like, you're already looking at the older gentleman thinking, oh, this guy is slowing them down. Oh no, this guy is a risk for them. And it's like, no, that guy is a human, and he's just trying to get by.
Yes.
And I thought about. Oh,
so we get a sense of that at one point in episode 8. And by the way, I love that Andy Serkis has now played two different roles, minimum of two different roles in Star Wars, like Snoke and then this character. He plays this character so well. So well. I love how he we get a part. How does it play out where he's he talks about how he comes by the table and he's like, because Andor stops for a second and leans to the table. He goes, what? Yeah. Are we just taking a breather? Come on, guys. We just got to let it go. We win the shift. He's like, let's do it. And then immediately turns back into the, like, he's like, because you're not going to like what happens afterwards. To realize that, like, he just has his own goals. Or like when he tells Cassian, he's like, I'm used to winning and getting this. And don't F this up for me. I have 249 days. And I think the time we get here is actually 30 days, because when
30 days, yeah, he has 30 shifts.
Yeah, he's 30 shifts in, because Andy Serkis says that 249 days left. Basically, he says, "Don't F this up for me." He's like, yes. I've got this left, and I do not want to fry. Like, you're gonna help me get the hell out of here. Like, I don't give a crap about you. I want out, and you're gonna do whatever you need to do to get me out of here. I find it, your comment about the younger people and older people. It's so relevant, especially here in the United States, when you think about a younger generation stereotypically. So I'm overgeneralizing, of course, but stereotypically, seeing the older person is like, oh, they can't keep up with that. Why has that person got this job? And blah 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 blah. And when you step back, you realize we're all just human beings with each other, right? We're doing the thing for that person up in a mahogany row, sitting back, going, yeah, let's naively like, yes, excellent.
And that's what I mean.
It's like this is a vicious cycle we're feeding ourselves into, like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm an anarchist now. I mean, maybe. But I'm just saying that
I would be surprised if you didn't have the Anarchist Cookbook on your bookshelf someplace.
Exactly. I'm not joking around. I'm
really sure you do
have like copies of stuff like that too. And I mean, I'm a big literature fan. Like, I read everything all the time. And my use of the word literature, I think some viewers here might be listening, and maybe some might even report me via the Patriot Act. But nevertheless, there's a prisoner who is with Cassian, who we later see in Rogue One, which I thought this was a great recasting of an actor, who is this actor who plays Melshi. He is later in Rogue One on the team that he's a part of Cassian's Rogue group.
Yes.
And so I love that this actor's there, but he has this line that he tells him, which is, he grabs Cassian and he says, "You're here until they don't want you anymore." And that is how these types of systems work. As long as Cassian provides usefulness, he is going to be there. And again, these people are in prison, but they have policed themselves, yes, because one, corporal punishment, and two, they get these little bits of small human pleasures. And again, I will tell you, there is that book I was talking about by Iceberg Slim. It is a rough book to read. It is not a book that any young person should read, but it is a book that tells the story of how if you brutalize people long enough and then give them little bits of kindness, they think that you're their friend. And it is a terrible, it's a terrible situation, but it is how oppressed societies work.
Yeah.
Is that by giving you these little bits of things that you should already have, like food with flavor, that is somehow this great kindness that you've achieved. And yeah, to your point about all of these people that they're working for, that they can't even see, this is a part of panopticism. At one point they're even saying, I think we can see them, I think that they're doing this, because again, they can't tell if they're being checked up on. They just know that they're being watched and that they need to obey. And that's what Mon Mothma is saying in her apartment. That is what Luthien is saying. And that's even why Saw Gerrera on the other extreme, who is an anarchist, can't obey anything. And again, I think it's a prison of no matter if you're Andor, who is in a room with no windows and just trying to survive, or you're Mon Mothma on the top of a building of the capital planet, and she even says, "I don't even look out the windows."
Yep.
Andy
Serkis's character, when Andor is finishing up his intake to the prison and gets brought down the escalator or elevator, whatever, and put into the room and handed over to Andy Serkis. And he basically says, because Cassian keeps looking around and like looks up at this, sees the guy walking by, and he goes, "Don't look up there. They're not coming back. Only to clear out the dead." And like, they're just gone. Like to your point, there's no one standing there watching them. And we saw it in the room before. Like, there's a tech up there, but basically, like, you're not getting out of this room. They're not going to just let you out, because they can literally turn the room on the floor to something that will fry and kill everybody instantly. Like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to me what happens to you. Like, you're going to police yourselves. I'm making another prisoner police you. Like, and those prisoners then have to compete again. It is the sadomasochistic version of a pyramid scheme. Like, it is literally what it is.
Which I'm not a revolutionary, but you could say that that's capitalism. I mean, again, there is something to be said about a system that chews people up and spits them out, and the whole time promising that, yes, you too could be at the top.
Yeah.
And that if you only work hard enough and screw enough people over, that you can get to the top too. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I'm not saying that I read Mao's Little Red Book. I'm just saying that this show is taking a stand, and I love that. I know that we're over time, and so I'll just end this. The message that this show is trying to say, as it happens politically, is one that I'm open to listening to. But more than anything, even if this isn't a message that you like, and that could be found in other movies like The Matrix, I might add, or so many other pieces of art. What's great about art is that all art is political, because it involves choices. And the greatest stories are when people make really strong choices, even if you don't agree with them. And I love this show because it's taking and making some strong choices. I brought up V for Vendetta. When I read V for Vendetta, it was a visceral experience to me. When Evie finds her freedom and reclaims that last inch in her brain. Mm-hmm. It was a moment that it's a graphic novel, and I was like engrossed in it. I couldn't tear myself away, and it's because I had this amazingly visceral experience to this story, and that's what I'm experiencing with Andor. And again, it might not be your politics, but we should all be excited to see a show like Andor come out that is taking a stand and is not so vanilla to appease the masses. I love this show. It is not just a great Star Wars show. It is a great piece of art.
I totally agree. It's amazing television. I'm just going to stop there because you said it. I think you summed it up beautifully. I think that was perfect. All right, so we're going to wrap tonight. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate joining it. It's awesome to see you. Aussie Star Wars nerd.
Yes.
Thank you again for being here and sticking through this, like leaving and coming back. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for coming back.
And a reminder to, I don't remember these things well. Daz the Comic Key Chaser. I found him on YouTube. I've got his email address. I'll reach out to them. Got a book waiting for you. And soon enough, we're going to do some more giveaways. So stay tuned. Keep watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'd love to have you here. we're loving Andor. We've got more to say
Yes.
about that. And next week we're gonna have to get into Tales of the Jedi because
Yes.
that is
So good.
just beauty. Like I don't know how better to say it. It is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. One of the last episodes, I think, if not the last episode of the series, I had to rewatch 2 or 3 times because there's a lot of parallels in it with the E.K. Johnston book about Ahsoka that I completely adore. So we'll get into that next week.
Yeah,
And
it's a
probably over
renaissance.
more than just 1 week. There's just too much to talk about.
No, there is. I think we're gonna split up. I think we got to split up Tales of the Jedi into 2 parts. But yeah, like with Andor going on and this, I feel like Star Wars has hit their stride. This is not just a great time to be a fan. If you like good stories,
Yes,
this is tune in.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
is great.
Yep, this is it. Well, listen, everyone. Thank you so much, Joanna. Thank you. We appreciate it. Have a good night, and we will see you back here next week.
Hey, bye everyone.
Bye, everyone.